Spending a week at the bottom of the ocean is pretty much as crazy as it sounds. You get into a tin can with a couple of other people and they lower you in. You sink to the seafloor and live in the airspace at the top of that can for a week. There's not a lot of space when you're breathing fresh air down there, so the only reason to go is if you live to scuba. That's all there is to do down there. Normally you get an hour of dive time for each tank of air you're carrying, so every hour you have to go back up to the surface from the bottom of the ocean, which takes time. When you're living down there, it's different. Your dive time becomes limited only by your endurance. We set up fast refill stations and use high-powered hoses to refill our tanks with air. That way you can stay in the water for as long as you want. Hours fly by while you're down there, and you can never get bored. It's a whole different planet on the seafloor, and who wouldn't want to spend all day staring at aliens? Fish of countless varieties swim past, in all the colors of the rainbow. Sea turtles and octopus, dolphins and manta rays, sharks and whales, you'll see it all. Not to mention the unparalleled beauty of the coral reefs themselves, and all the plethora of life forms that dwell symbiotically within it. The only thing I didn't like was nighttime at the bottom of the ocean. You'd look out from the habitat into utter blackness, darker than anything you've ever seen. And how can you not imagine what's out there? We had seen sharks, giant octopus, and barracudas swimming nearby. There's also everything else your imagination can come up with. Everything you've seen on movies and TV that isn't real. Amphibious humanoids that look like Swamp Thing, who creep up silently from the kelp and grab your arm with their hands. Dotted with suckers like the tentacles of an octopus. Giant krakens and massive dinosaur sharks left over from the Jurassic period. And all other manner of nightmares could be out in that darkness. When you spend a week down there, you begin to realize just how ignorant we are of the world that exists in tandem with ours. You try to avoid those thoughts when you're out of the habitat at night. You have to leave the habitat to go to the bathroom, so there's no avoiding it if you need to go number 2. One night I was awoken by a rumbling in my stomach around 3 a.m. It was dark inside the tin can we called home. Silent, except for the sound of water splashing up against the inside of the hab. My stomach lurched again, this time more urgently. I realized I would need to go outside. I put my mask on, but didn't take my regulator or oxygen, since the little hut we used as a toilet wasn't that far away, maybe 20 feet, and it had the same space of air at the top like the little tin can we were in. I could easily hold my breath for that long to get there. The light from the little hut gleamed ahead of me as I dove down into the darkness, my mind still foggy with sleep. The dim bulb on the outhouse was the only other light in the universe, so I went to it with urgency, for more than one reason. When I got there, I popped my head up into the little air bubble inside and pulled down my trunks. I had made it just in time. Pretty soon fish were coming by for their morning meal, and I swatted at them with my hand, trying to pinch it off before they could burrow their little faces further into my ass crack. Fucking fish. Disgusting. As if that wasn't nightmare enough, there was that blackness. All around except for the light from the outhouse, and the one from the habitat. The darkness stretched out forever and was infinite in its mystery. I wondered briefly how far away the nearest great white shark was, and if they would be attracted to the scent of all the other smaller fish. I shook my head and tried to think of anything else. It was completely silent except for my breathing, and the sound of water splashing gently against the inside of the hut. I finally pulled up my trunks, slapping a fish with my hands as I did so, and waited for a moment for the air to clear, so to speak. No sense rushing the dive back into the blackness, I thought, especially considering what I just polluted it with. After a minute, I took a breath and popped back into the water from the air bubble. I swam towards the light of the habitat. When I was not even halfway there, both lights flickered and went out. I was immediately disoriented. My foggy mind had just been asleep a few minutes ago, and I wished I had taken longer to wake up before venturing out alone. I hadn't even woken anyone else up to tell them where I was going. The afterimage of the glow from the habitat still danced in my vision, so I followed it, my heart beating fast and heavy in my chest. I felt terrified and hoped I was heading in the right direction. I followed my instincts and training and tried to ignore the part of my brain that told me I might not be going the right way. Suddenly, I felt something large brush against my hand, and I recoiled backwards in shock. What the hell was that? I wondered. I was picturing a giant hammerhead right in front of me, instead of the habitat. My panic intensified. My vision was starting to go a bit red around the edges, and I wondered how much time I had wasted. It was a good thing I could hold my breath for a long time. I tried to swim in the direction of the habitat, but I suddenly wasn't sure which way it was anymore. The thing that had brushed against my hand had felt large, and it had scared me more than a little bit. Kicking with my flippers, I began swimming in the direction I thought was right. My hand brushed up against it, whatever it was. This time it was on the other side of me. I tried to ignore my fear and kept kicking with my legs. My vision was beginning to flood with redness, and I was really starting to feel true dread and fear bloom inside of me like I had never felt before. Every part of me was screaming for air. I tried to calm my mind and remember my training. My hand grabbed onto something, and in my confused and oxygen-deprived state, I mistook it for a power line, running to the outhouse. I began to pull myself along the misshapen tube, and it began to squirm and writhe in my grip. I continued along nonetheless, hoping it would lead me back to the habitat. As I got closer, I felt more of the weird, organically shaped tubes. They felt lumpy and had spikes and divots here and there, and I realized with disgust that they were definitely not oxygen or electrical lines. They seemed to stick to my hands when I grabbed onto them, not wanting to let go. I had to pry my hand off the last time and decided to stop touching them altogether. Just as I was about to lose all hope, my left hand brushed up against the hard, metallic edge of the habitat. I had almost gone right by it, I realized with a wave of horrified relief. I had almost swam right past it and out into the open water. I felt the shape of it and managed to correct my path. I popped my head back up into the habitat and gasped for air, panting and coughing up water from my lungs. I climbed up out of the water and managed to find the ladder leading to my bunk. Fuck, I almost died out there just now, I yelled and was surprised when no one woke up to ask if I was okay. I felt new fear well up inside of me, thinking of all the tangled organisms that had been all over the outside of the habitat. What the hell were those things? And why wasn't anyone talking or waking up inside the hab? I rummaged through my things and pulled out my flashlight, wishing I had brought it with me earlier. How stupid. If I had died out there, I would have deserved it. I turned the light on and screamed. There was no rational explanation for what I saw inside the habitat. The other two members of my crew were surrounded by what appeared to be misshapen tentacles. But no, that's not quite right. Not tentacles, these were different. The long, tubular shapes that came up out of the water reminded me of a recent article about a siphonophore that had been discovered off the coast of Australia. It was now recorded as the longest creature ever seen by man. It was really a collection of zooids that came together and cloned itself thousands upon thousands of times to create an infinitely long silly string that could stretch for hundreds of meters. The crew which discovered it had called it akin to an underwater galaxy, and pictures of the siphonophore looked otherworldly. It went on forever, a twisting, spiraling organism that faded off into the distant ocean with no end in sight. This was like that, only much worse. This siphonophore appeared to have mutated, and it had picked up some new abilities never seen before in all of my research. The thing had absorbed other marine life somehow. I saw barracuda with sharp teeth, small sharks and eels, their eyes wide and terrified, opening and closing their mouths. They were covered with a thin membrane, and appeared to have been attached to the thing against their will. They were now prisoners of it, being dragged along by the massive, ropey sea creature. My crew had the tentacle things all around them, choking them at their necks and wrapped around their bodies and arms. The white flesh of the thing was spreading across them rapidly, wrapping them up in its slimy sheath. My crewmate, Mike, tried to scream, but his own voice was muffled as I saw a vine of siphonophore crawl down his throat, planting little roots as it went. I was terrified, hyperventilating. I ducked back into the furthest corner of my bunk and watched in horror as the thing consumed my crewmates rapidly and attached itself to them. I watched as it pulled them under and dragged them into the ocean, their eyes still wide and afraid. Would it filter the ocean water through its gills so they could live down there? I wondered. Would it provide oxygen to the new members of the colony? Or would it just consume them for fuel and move on? No one would have ever believed me if I told them what happened. So I told people it was a diving accident. I told them I tried to save Mike and Beth, but there wasn't anything I could do. A search party turned up nothing, just as I expected. When I got back to the surface, I told my family I would never step foot in the sea again. They think it's because I'm remorseful. They think I just feel bad about Mike and Beth. But that's not it. I mean, I feel bad about them, sure, but what I really think about, what really keeps me out of the ocean now, is what's down there, under the surface. I saw how fast that thing consumed them. I think about the transatlantic garbage patch and how that was the big problem for a while. Well, folks, I think we might have a new problem now. Become a channel member today for early access, bonus videos, and special emojis only available to members. Check out the description below or click the join button for more info. If you'd like another way to help support the channel, please consider joining my Patreon page at patreon.com/JordanGroupeHorror. As a patron, you'll get access to bonus videos and content. You'll be credited at the end of every video going forward. And if you decide to stay for 3 months, I'll name a character after you, which will be featured in a Hollow's End story. Links to join the Patreon are in the description. Thanks everyone for listening. Please like, subscribe, and comment to help the channel continue to grow. And see you again next time at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hope you have a great night.